Assassin's Creed Odyssey is just that game in the Assassin's Creed franchise that will definitely get some fans raising their pitchforks at. It's probably the most controversial entry to the series, with many believing that it was truly the step that turned Assassin's Creed from a game about assassins to a fantasy RPG without a connection to the remainder of the series or any real understanding of the core of Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was the first to introduce selecting a male or female protagonist, had no hidden blade involved in the gameplay, included a lot of mythology and fantasy, had some really ridiculously over-the-top goofy moments, rather underwhelming acting, and an overall lack of a real Assassin's Creed flair to it. So then, with that all being said, why on earth would I even think that this game is underrated? Let me explain. Okay, let me start by saying that there are a lot of problems with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And by lots, I mean a ton. The parkour is clunky, heavy, and feels like it has no true flair to it. I did like that almost all surfaces could be climbed up in Odyssey, but aside from that, the parkour was stiff. It was missing the style from Assassin's Creed Unity, the opportunities from Assassin's Creed 2, and more. It just didn't seem to have that part of it down at all. Like I've said in prior videos, parkour is objectively one of the defining parts of Assassin's Creed. Without it, it's just not an Assassin's Creed game. So bad parkour is, in my eyes, just as bad as no parkour. Leveling up in Odyssey has to be one of the worst systems in any Assassin's Creed game. It's more than just a grind, it's an insane grind. Now, I wouldn't complain about having more content to play through if I didn't need to play through every random side quest, in order to be able to even conceptualize playing through the content. To add on to that point, a lot of the side quests are pretty stupid in Odyssey and didn't really mean too much at the end of the day. There are some rewarding ones, but since the game is so bloated and stuffed to the brim with content, there's not much of a way to sift through the bad stuff to recognize the good stuff. Having the two-character selection system is quite frankly one of the dumbest decisions in the entire franchise. In my eyes, it would have been much better if Odyssey just made you play one character like every other Assassin's Creed game ever did. Sure, Syndicate may have had two characters, but they were siblings and the two were cohesive for the story. Not like Odyssey where it's one and done. And then they doubled down on this system in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But at least Valhalla lets you play as both if you want to switch. I'm beyond glad that Mirage is not going to have this awful selection system because it's just pointless. My view is that Odyssey should have been about Alexios and Valhalla about female Eivor. That way it feels right in my eyes. Or they could have just made Odyssey about Cassandra and moved on. Personally, I felt Alexios fit the role better, but I actually wouldn't have minded at all if it was just Cassandra all along. The reasoning behind why they picked to add a male option is also pretty stupid. I doubt that many people will refuse to buy the game because of a female protagonist. I think people will refuse to buy the game if it's bad, but I doubt anyone cares about who they're playing. Otherwise, games like Tomb Raider and characters from Mortal Kombat wouldn't be beloved by fans. Plus, the entire time they advertised Alexios. He's on the front cover, he's in the promo material, the trailer, literally everything. So like any other person, I assumed Alexios was the character. Then they drop a whole canon, non-canon thing and make Cassandra the real main character all along. Man up and advertise the character you want to be the main one. It's ridiculous how silly the whole thing was. It's not the end of the world, but it was definitely unnecessary. The voice acting was pretty subpar in my eyes, and it felt a bit disconnected from how a normal person would speak in most parts. There were plenty of exceptions though, especially in more heightened emotional scenes. That I did appreciate from Odyssey, but compared to other installments in the series, I felt disconnected from the characters, and that really did annoy me. I wasn't sure how to relate to them much because they just didn't feel lifelike. They felt like game characters, and that's not a good thing. Story-wise, I liked Odyssey. The cult was interesting, the dynamics and interactions between characters were pretty fun sometimes, and there were lots of things that I really liked about the plot. The unfortunate thing is though that because of the way the XP system works, you have to diverge from the story often and get into those side quests, which breaks the story in my eyes. When I played the story, I had a lot of fun, but the game is very overstuffed, and that made it a little muddled. To add on to this point, Assassin's Creed Odyssey had a large map with mostly empty space and not enough parkour-friendly cities. Sure, a lot of the areas looked brilliant and the game is overall very beautiful, but the lack of parkour space makes it a bit annoying. Free running is not as doable in Odyssey as other Assassin's Creed games. However, the architecture, design, and structure of the map of Odyssey was beautiful. The entire thing was amazing to look at. Sometimes I would just stop to admire the architecture because it's genuinely brilliant. There may be weak points to the map's design, but there were strong points as well. But moving on from all these negatives, I want to talk about some of the things that I felt were good about Odyssey. Firstly, I actually had fun with it. Yeah, sure, it's bloated and stuffed, but there is some fun to be had with this title. Stealth capabilities are more limited compared to other entries to the series, especially with the stupid lack of being able to have a guaranteed assassination, but it felt like the enemy detection was much more forgiving in Odyssey compared to some other stealth games out there. However, for every good point, there is a bad point as well. Because Odyssey's map is so wide and open, stealth and assassinations are very limited and you're stuck having to use head-on combat, where it's just a button-mashing contest. There's not really any fun to be had there because it takes away from the core element of Assassin's Creed. It's just dodge and hit, dodge and hit. There's not much flair there, but the combat wasn't the worst either way. I felt like Odyssey's inclusion of large-scale battles was unique and definitely something interesting for Assassin's Creed. I think that Odyssey could have done the combat system properly if it basically had a mix of good stealth and good large combat battles. I don't think that there's anything wrong with the battles. I just wish the stealth were better for when it was being used. I did my best, but being unable to assassinate an opponent really destroyed the stealth aspects of Odyssey. The lack of a hidden blade was something that annoyed me at first. Although the hidden blade obviously didn't exist yet, there could have been some way to add a similar feature in. Plus, I'm sure hidden blades existed in some capacity. They don't need to look or work the same as the ones that we see in Assassin's Creed usually. But I say it annoyed me at first, because at the end of the day, it does make sense that Cassandra doesn't have a hidden blade technically. The game takes place before the hidden blade and the hidden ones and the Assassin's Brotherhood and all that was conceived. So I gave that part a pass, to be honest. Naval combat was fine, I didn't really have any issues with this point. I like that you could recruit mercenaries you fight to join your crew, and I found the advancements to the naval combat since Black Flag introduced it to be good as well, and I had fun with it. I didn't have any problems there from my end. Assassin's Creed Odyssey had lots of weak and awful points to it, yet I did manage to enjoy it. It did end up having some type of charm that made it much more engaging than I had thought. When I went to buy Odyssey, I wanted to keep an open mind. Too many times, people really just listen to one popular opinion and hop a bandwagon and move on, and decide that that opinion is the only right one. I didn't want to do that because I like to keep an open mind. So I decided to just play it for myself, and I put in many hours before I decided how I felt about Odyssey. I didn't hate it at all. It's not the best, but it's not the worst game out there either. But I will admit this. As far as an Assassin's Creed title, it's not really an Assassin's Creed title. It's more of a disconnected prequel. It doesn't really have the core foundations of an Assassin's Creed title. It is somehow aware of the existence of those foundations, but chooses to gloss over them with a fantasy RPG adventure instead. Involving strange mythology that doesn't add much to the plot of Assassin's Creed felt weird. I didn't think it made much sense. Prior to Odyssey, it was understood that the Isu had designed the apple to make humankind. That's the story we knew all along. However, now we're involving too much of everything instead of enough of one thing. The modern day stuff doesn't feel like it means anything anymore either, which is pretty sad honestly. We had something golden with Desmond, but they unfortunately threw it away. Assassin's Creed is going through what I like to call an identity crisis, and it's pretty evident that when Odyssey and Valhalla doubled down on making it too much of an RPG rather than an Assassin's Creed game, Ubisoft wasn't really sure what it wanted to do with the franchise. Had Odyssey been marketed as its own title, I doubt people would have been annoyed at it. And that's what I'm getting at. As much as I love Odyssey and as much as I had fun with it, I too stopped feeling like it was Assassin's Creed. But let's face it, if it didn't have the Assassin's Creed branding on it, would people have actually bought it in the numbers that they did? Sure, I like the story and the atmosphere and the setting, and I like the combat for what it was, but had Ubisoft put in a stronger effort to connect it better to the other Assassin's Creed titles by making Cassandra an assassin of some sorts, because assassins have existed all throughout history, they didn't need to be called assassins to be assassins, then Odyssey would have definitely been a great game. Had the map been condensed a bit with more buildings and the parkour been smoother, then it could have been really good. Either way, I do believe that Odyssey received a lot of hate that felt exaggerated at times. People were acting like Ubisoft had nuked their house or something by releasing Odyssey. I don't particularly hate any titles in Assassin's Creed, just to let you all know. As much as I may blast them and critique them, I would certainly choose to play an Assassin's Creed game over a lot of other games any day, but some are certainly better than others. Odyssey is a great game, but when you think about all the parts of Assassin's Creed that differentiates it and makes it the game that it is, Odyssey is missing a good helping of those. Despite my critiques, however, I would probably give Odyssey another playthrough, and I believe that it is underrated in a sense, but the critiques are very valid. So in a way, it's up to you if you perceive it to be truly underrated. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed that video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe with notifications set to all. Comment down below what your thoughts on Odyssey were. Check out my military sci-fi series and newspaper. The links are in the description below. And until next time, Symbiosis out.